All right, we're ready to start the informal discussion on the Meadowbrook School Master Plan. Who's here to talk about that?
I'm here.
All right, before we start, this is an informal discussion. We're going to hear your presentation. We're not going to make comments or ask for input from the audience because our position is that Meadowbrook School is in violation of the earth removal bylaw, and we've said any number of times that we're not going to review anything formally until you get a special permit for that. So that's a trip to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and it's a 30-minute visit, and you can fix that easily.
We would be happy to fix it if we can, and we're here just for informational purposes tonight.
Well, we're not going to give you any feedback. So you're going to give us information, and we're going to listen.
Okay.
Okay.
We have some boards. Where would the best place be? Maybe over here?
Way over here.
Okay.
We can scooch this over.
And while you're setting up, we've given this about a half an hour for presentation. And we should introduce ourselves. I'm Al Edelin. I'm the chairman of the planning board, and my other members are
Suzette Rice.
Steve Oppenheimer.
David Mendelson.
Roy Chatteldash.
I'm JP Fine. I'm a trustee of the school. I'm a Weston resident. I'm also the new chair of the facilities committee. Been the chair for about a year and a half, or I'm a co-chair actually. This is Skip Burke from
Richard Burke Associates.
Ann Drought from OMR, and Lee Sherwood from OMR right here in front as well. OMR is the architectural team, and Skip is with the landscape.
Drought, D as in David, R-A-U-D-T.
With that, you can turn a little bit so it can be picked up by the camera.
right.
Yeah, Skip, if you could just shift this over.
Turn this.
Or just shift it.
Okay. How's that?
Sorry about the cramped space.
That's okay.
So I've made the introductions, but I'd like to sort of give you an overview of what we'll be presenting tonight. Over the past year or a little bit more, the Board of Trustees has been working with the student body, the faculty, the administrative staff, and our team to put together a campus master plan. We're doing this for a number of reasons. It was in conjunction with a strategic plan for the camp, or for the curriculum and the program. But we were also doing this as a result of hearing concern from the planning board over being surprised in the past and not knowing what our long-term plan is. So we've effectively created a roadmap for the next 10 to 15 years for the campus. And the overall goal for this master plan was to improve the facilities and the landscape in order to get it caught up and more in line with the really great program that Meadowbrook has. And so that was the main sort of larger goal, and some of the more specific goals that came out of this process are things like a deliberately small and intimate learning area. We really want to keep the campus intimate and small. We've also made a decision that we don't want to increase enrollment. We've asked the architects to design facilities with the existing number of students in mind. So we said no increase in enrollment. We want to improve efficiency and the quality of the campus without significantly increasing the footprint of our buildings. There was really a big push for efficiency and for sustainability, and to use our existing buildings and reconfigure them and keep our footprint as small as possible. Safety was paramount in our thinking. We were really concerned about the safety and security of our students and our faculty. To that end, the primary focus of the plan, which you'll see, is a more connected interior pathways within the campus. we want to connect the parking facilities and the other facilities and create natural spaces, an internal and more internal access within the buildings. Right now, our students leave buildings quite a bit and have to go back in. And in the wake of what's gone on in the world, there's security on every door, and kids need to know codes, and as they go in and out, it becomes a logistical and safety issue. So we've been focused on resolving that. We want to make the most of our natural environment. That was a big part of this. We want to work with the landscape, not against it. We spent a bunch of years in Meadowbrook, I think, working against it. And we really wanted to design sustainably, and the sort of slogan that we've taken on is we want to bring the meadow and the brook back in the Meadowbrook. So that's what they've been tasked with to a certain degree. We've asked our architects to design everything within the town's regulations and within the zoning bylaws. We've asked them to make sure that we're not looking for anything that's outside of what's allowed or required by the town, so no variances or anything like that, we hope. So we look forward to sharing our plans with you over the next months and year as we continue this process. This is just a draft master plan. We did have an informational meeting with the neighborhood on Monday night. We got some really good feedback from our neighbors. A letter went out to about 50 neighbors. We had a really good turnout, and it was a really positive and I think good experience for everybody. Some neighbors who were not so happy with some of the construction in the past got to voice their concerns. We heard them. We really want to make sure that going forward we address as many of them as we can, and we actually feel like it was we know it was a very constructive meeting. So with that, I'll leave it to the professionals.
All right. So again, I'm Ann Brown from OMR Architects, and what JP asked us to do is just to give you a little sense of the process that we've gone through getting to the master plan, and then share the results with you, just so you can really understand the thinking that's gone into it. And so we wanted to start by just sharing the goals and values, because that's where we start. We start by talking to the. Can anybody see this? Should I move these down?
Give this to me.
Is that better? It's challenging. How's that? I'm still moving. But anyways, as JP said, there were several main concerns at the start, but the really biggest one was, what can we do to give the students and the faculty what they need to do their jobs well? It wasn't about growing the student body. It's not about adding, big additional programs. And it was really just about, what are the spaces that they need to do their job? How can we make it a safe, secure environment so that people are focused on the education, not just on keeping the kids safe? And again, as he said, keeping the sense of intimacy. I don't know how many of you have actually been to the campus, but it's got a wonderful feeling to it, a very warm residential feel, and how do we keep that as well? So that was the underlying basis, and then we went out and talked with the teachers, the faculty, the students, and we came up with a sort of list of programmatic elements. I'm not going to go through all of them, but it's basically two categories: excellence in learning and teaching, and it's a lot of very specific spaces. So breakout spaces, classroom spaces, a new library. The library is really just a space with some books in it at this point. Doesn't accommodate collaboration, technology, a lot of the things that our people are doing now. Connected spaces for science, technology, engineering, arts, math. It's one of Meadowbrook's premier programs, is the STEAM program, but there's really no spaces to support it. And then an innovation lab, so that the kids can start making things, testing out ideas, learning how things work that way. And then, of course, a lot of pieces of communities, too. Right now, the entry to the school literally has seating for about 3 people. Things like that that you need as you grow to expand. Expanded office spaces that would all be together so they can work together, and then some very specific, lockers, facility department, things like that. So it's a very program-driven master plan, going through all the existing spaces, going through the existing campus to really understand how it works. So Skip's going to tell you about sort of the same level of what they were looking for in terms of the landscape. and then we'll show you the actual master plan.
Can I use your tray?
Yeah.
Should I turn it more?
No,
It's okay.
no.
Okay. So just to get you oriented, this first board shows a current year photo, the property lines, so it shows the two parcels. North is that way, so Route 20 is sort of going up and down. If you're trying to get here from Route 20, you'd come down Summer Street here, take a right on Farm Road, and drive on in. But we have this parcel here, this parcel here. This includes the recent acquisition of 21 Autumn Road, which is this parcel right there. And again, just sort of continuing with a little orientation. In terms of the site elements that we have there right now, across Farm Road, we have the upper fields here, stream corridor with associated wetlands. We have the pond here, which is almost a century old. It was actually 4 discrete skating rinks when it started, lit at night. Playground in this area, a ball field, soccer field, upper meadow, steep woodland here, and then across the middle, outdoor pool, 2 gyms here, the academic building in this area, a front drop-off with its associated parking, which kind of separates the school from the pond, and in the back, a rear drop-off parking. As we move further north here, the large parking lot, tennis courts, and more open space here with the 21 Autumn Road parcel. To get started, we like to think about landscapes as educational resources. So the first thing we did was brought in a horticulturalist to take a look and see if she could identify different plant associations here that we might use as an educational resource. And she identified these 7 different associations, which are numbered around here. So that sort of gave us a starting point. And then we asked if she would look at the plants in those associations and describe their history of use and their culture, and that's really where it really started to get interesting in terms of the natural resources on the site. For example, you have gray birch, which is used to make canoes. You have white ash on site, which is used to make the paddles for canoes. You've got ironwood, which is used to make bows. We have arrowwood viburnum, which is used to make the arrows. You have 3 different kinds of nut trees, all that were consumed by American Indians. A pretty high protein level in beech nuts. I never knew that before. That was quite interesting. And we also looked at the landscape through a different lens, one of just indigenous plant materials, and then the areas of disturbance that just happen as a result of construction of either buildings or sports fields. And so we painted or colored those 2 different colors. The disturbed areas are the orange. And what you find is that when you do have disturbance like that, usually the owner of the school goes to a garden center and buys plants that probably came from the Far East, halfway around the world, very ornamental azaleas and things like that. And so you get this real mismatch between what's indigenous and what is planted on all the edges. And so one of our recommendations to Meadowbrook is that in the phasing of this project, they start to edit out these introduced plants and use the natural associations which we've identified to take their place, to do the same kind of job of screening and things like that. The area that we would continue to have ornamental planting would be special areas, courtyards, gardens where people spend a lot of time, especially entering and exiting the school. These more natural plants will take a lot, they're more sustainable, they consume a lot less water, and live longer and support wildlife. In addition, we looked at some of the design conventions that have been used on campus. You know, it's a suburban campus with some sort of rural qualities to it as well, but it has very urban kinds of design conventions, like sidewalks, where walkways are next to roads, and what we're recommending is that we use these walkways in the landscape wherever possible, and so you're going to see that in our design proposal. As JP mentioned, one of the big goals here is just connectivity, to try and create a much more connected, integrated school here. So this was actually the first strong concept that we developed here, and it was to create this continuous pedestrian spine here that would connect the upper fields with the tennis courts, the parking, the main academic area here, the main drop-off, and again, sports fields on up. And that we would create a destination at either end, just like a shade structure or something like that, that you could see if you're on the path and you knew where you were going, so that it would have, I think, a greater identity than it might otherwise have. So that was really key, I think, to starting to knit together the school in an organized way in all of its disparate parts. With the acquisition of 21 Autumn, the property line of which went up to about the word pedestrian before it came back down, that allowed us to do a similar thing down here, connecting the rear drop-off in this part of the school with the parking lot too. So it's a much shorter gesture, but it's the same kind of thing. And it creates a lot more convenience and safety because school children are not walking adjacent to traffic all the way around. And what we ultimately did then is to tie those circulation gestures together with the science walk, which knits together all of these different plant associations here. So we have those different levels of circulation that are being proposed for the school. And all together, this is the master plan here. And it hasn't changed really in terms of what we're proposing. Most everything is in the same locations, and Ann will describe the buildings or additions, renovations in darker gray here, which are the changes. One key thing here, here's the circulation spine here and the other one down here, that we've done is we've moved the entry drive back to its original location in order to gain more land here so that we could create this as a sidewalk and not a walkway. And that has also given us enough land here to put a parking lot here and a proposed one here. Together, they add just under 50 spaces to the school. And as JP said, we're not adding a student body, we're not adding any major events. We just need that because the school is underparked right now, and we need that as a resource so that we can park in parking spaces as opposed to pulling up alongside drives and things like that.
It's also kind of, we're eliminating some up by the water.
Oh, that's right. Yes, thank you. Yeah, in terms of quality of life and what JP mentioned, trying to put the meadow and the brook back into the school, where most people gather, pick up and drop off here, the existing parking really separated you visually from one of the nicest assets, the pond, and so we're taking those spaces out and starting to put those in other areas too.
So, Skip showed you what's happening on the outside. And then in terms of building, there's a few different pieces to this. Obviously, when you go through a process like this, we looked at a lot of different options. And you try and figure, would you put a wing out here? Are there a lot of different ways you can approach it. And really, as JP said, in the end, the school really wanted to utilize the existing footprint as much as possible. So if you actually, it's the original one. just the aerial there. Yeah, so if you look at the existing, if you look at the existing campus, it's a little bit hard to tell on the aerial, but this is the main academic building right here existing. It houses the library, a number of classrooms, the lower school, pieces like that. And the main piece of the academic part of this proposal is to actually demolish that and replace it with this building, which would basically be roughly the same footprint. I mean, expanded in a very small amount, but really just building it in a more efficient way that would house, the kinds of spaces that they need now in terms of collaboration. It would have lower school suites on the lower floor and new art studios. It would have a new learning commons, an innovation center, new science labs, and then on the upper floor, a new library and technology spaces. If you're familiar with the McDowell Center, it would be very similar in scale to the McDowell and massing to that. And then in addition to that, there's other components. This is the administration wing. And so you can see the orange here is new construction, blue is renovation. So what we'd be doing is just adding on a little bit to that so that we could get the administration suites all together and working properly. Making some connections over here, and this is where what JP was talking about in terms of security. Right now the students do have to go in and out a lot to go between their various programs, and the idea is to work as much as possible to create connections where they could be just going internally throughout the campus. So that's connecting to, this is the lower school gym, this is the upper school gym, which is currently also the auditorium space, which that's the whole stage and backstage and everything, so you can imagine that's a little challenging to work with. So the other large component of this is potential expansion on the new site, which would be a performing arts center with a small, or 300-seat auditorium on it. In addition, there's just some smaller pieces on this. The deck house that exists on Autumn Road now would be replaced by a facilities support building, and then the small shelters that Skip was mentioning. So obviously that's a lot of different pieces, and we've started to think about phasing. Phasing obviously takes a long time to come to final plans, but we just wanted to share with you just some ideas. The idea here is that phase one would be that academic center, because that's really what it's solving the immediate problems that the teachers are dealing with right now. I mean, they literally have classes wandering the halls trying to find a space to meet sometimes, and the library and all of those pieces. So that would be the first phase, and then related to that would be the landscaping to really support that piece. So it's doing the parking, the reworking of the entry drive, and the landscaping component, making the landscape more sustainable, some of the science elements. The second phase would be kind of more of the infill pieces of making the existing buildings that remain work better. So you can see there's quite a bit of renovation. This is in the middle school, this is in the administration wing, this is some of those connections that we were talking about, and then a modest amount of landscape work in the upper fields over here in the meadow. And then the final phase would be the performing arts complex, which is basically a freestanding building with just hopefully a connection there, and then the related infrastructure for that, which would be just reworking the drop-off. So those are the basic components, and then we just wanted to show you. The school started off with saying, how can we make spaces that would really make the programs work? And these are some of the spaces that we're talking about. So, new learning commons with innovation lab and library all connected. New art studios with a gallery so that you can kind of make stuff and then see where it's displayed. New science labs that are flexible and daylit. And this is a view of the new lower school classrooms, which are really, about both scale and playfulness, but also about security, visibility, all of those things for the youngest students.
Okay, thank you. What I would suggest is a couple of things. First thing, get the special permit, the earth removal, so we can actually interact with you. And that's just a matter of getting on the Zoning Board of Appeals agenda and getting the permit and getting it done. The second thing is, if you wouldn't mind sending colored reproductions of what you've shown us to Betsy so that she can distribute those to us, so we'll have a better idea of where things fit, with a suggestion of what the time frame would be for the various phases. That would be helpful.
You definitely do it.
All right, and then I guess
This was it's still a draft, and we intentionally did that so we could get feedback from the board before we went too much further.
Well,
and we haven't approved it, the Board of Trustees haven't voted on it. We wanted to share it with the neighbors and with you before we went too far with that.
what I would suggest is, if you get the permit, give us the copies, come back to us. We will have had a chance to review the materials, and then we'll have some, I think we'd be able to ask some intelligent questions and make some intelligent comments. Because this is a lot of information, and it would take us some time to process it.
I have a leave behind for today.
All right.
And I will also talk with our team and try and get you something electronically.
Okay, that sounds terrific. We've got a few more minutes. Just if there are questions from anyone in the audience that has an interest, quick questions that you might have. Yes, you can, actually don't ask us because we're not part of the conversation here, but ask them, the presenters, that would be great.
Are you planning to demolish the house on Autumn?
Well, the
Put
house
out your
on-
name, please, for the
Oh,
record.
sorry, Nancy Fleming, 61 Meadowbrook Road.
21 on them, the house.
The new house.
The new house.
I mean, the old house that you bought.
Well, we don't have any immediate plans of that initially, but yes, as a part of a long-term goal, yes, I would imagine it would be removed.
And how close does the Performing Arts Center come to the property line? Because we're butters in two different cases of neighbors.
The Performing Arts Center is within the setbacks, which I believe are 45 feet, so it doesn't come within 45 feet of the lot line.
And I think if you look here, it would actually be behind the existing house.
Yes, it's significantly
The
behind.
existing house is here,
Right.
so the Performing Arts Center would actually be.
Is that right behind that?
Yes,
Behind.
that's 21 right there.
We look right at the gym. So we would look
Oh, you're
right
over
at
here.
this too. Yeah, we're right at that. So that's-
Artemis Willis. I just have an emotional attachment to the old original school building because my husband's father designed it, Harold Willis. And you said that's going to be torn down.
Not the one where the current entry is.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's
The
staying.
administrative building.
That's getting renovated
Oh,
with
the
a small
original.
addition.
All right.
No, because that's kind of the most historic component.
It is.
No, there's the place where the library, the octagonal piece was, that
Uh-huh.
then has been replaced by the
right.
triangular library. That's the piece that's coming
Thank
down.
you.
We like it too.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Could you point that out? The original?
The
This
original
piece
right
here.
there.
Okay.
So the dance used to be.
I'm curious, JP, Susan Cannonberg, you had something on one of the previous boards, space for growing summer camp activities. You can imagine what the neighbors feel about growing summer activities. We think there's like way more than enough as it is. Is that supposed to be literal or?
I don't think it's supposed to be literal. We have no intention of expanding the summer camp.
I think it's
either.
550 or something at the moment.
I believe
Yeah,
it's-
it's a special permit.
Yeah, special permit.
I don't think it's that
I think it's
high.
4.
I think it's
Yeah, I
4.
think it is.
It's no more than 4.
Right.
Okay. And another question, I kept looking for this as the slides went by. 21 Autumn
Yes.
has this beautiful glen. Half of the property is this beautiful glen right next to the road with the rushing waterfalls and brook and so forth. I just assumed that you wouldn't be doing anything with it.
Yeah.
I thought it went along the road. No, okay, my perception isn't going to work. So that light-colored Where is Autumn, I see Autumn Road, okay, sorry.
Right, so this is the one that,
Okay, right, so it comes actually from the, all right. I don't even remember the direction, but it's flowing pretty much all the time, every time I've gone by.
It's subject to the Wetlands Protection Act.
Yes.
Right, yes, of course, it's kind of
Yeah.
obvious, it's pretty wet.
I mean, of the 4 acres, about 2.5 acres of it is wet.
Yeah, I was a little, well, of course, I didn't expect you would want to change it, it's such a fantastically beautiful,
no, we would like
Thing.
to bring that element out.
pardon?
We'd like to use that.
Right,
through a
right.
pedestrian nature walk.
Why would you want to? And then, am I correct, there's like 4 bridges over, not at the part that you can see from the street, but back?
Yes.
See,
Yeah.
can you
Yes.
point?
Yeah, the bridges.
1, 2, 3, and 4, yeah, okay.
Correct.
Mhm.
So those are deliberately gonna be over that water and not interfere with that at all?
Correct.
Yes.
They're pedestrian.
Mhm.
Right, and that's something we go through the Conservation Commission with quite thoroughly.
In some ways, it's really a way to,
It's a
so
lot.
that people can really connect. You've been to places where there's a wetland, people have a really appropriate way of walking through it. That's really protective, but it really brings you into it. And I think because of the school is an experiential learning school for kids, anytime we can bring them closer to nature and to science, and I suppose anybody could walk back there, that's considered a real benefit.
Well, that's up to you. You can
Yeah.
welcome the neighbors or not. I mean,
Sure.
I've lived next to the river school for 25 years, and they share their beachfront with the neighbors during
Your
the
name
hours
for
that
the
they're not
record.
running their camp.
Could I have his name for the record, please?
Lee Sherwood.
We show it from Palomar Architects.
I'm Alan Rose. My wife and I own 25 Autumn Road, which is immediately adjacent to 21 Autumn Road. And we share a property line with Meadowbrook, and I have 2 boys at Meadowbrook. And I'd just like to commend Tom Grape and Board of Trustees and JP Fine for coming to us early, getting neighbors involved in the process, sharing this plan in draft form, and giving people an opportunity to weigh in on it. We have some concerns that I've expressed to JP, and the school is committed to engaging in an interactive process, and I think that they are headed in the right direction in terms of dealing with the community. And I hope at some point the planning board will weigh in as well and share their concerns, and everyone will be able to come to an understanding about the plans and get on board with it.
Okay, any other comments?
JP, just to continue, I didn't hear about this till last week, and I've been there 20 years, so you're more fortunate than I. And I know Tom, he's been very good. I just want to suggest for the record, which I told you when you called, the effort that the school made previously to get Meadowbrook, which you would like to reincorporate into the school big picture, converted from a perennial to an intermittent stream, which many of the neighbors weren't happy about, to say the least. It's just another thing to us all. Why? And it would be a great step toward generating credibility with the neighbors to rescind that effort. I mean, you can't change it. The Conservation Commission ruled, so it's now been converted into an intermittent. Poof! It's intermittent now. But it would be great if you guys said, no, we're going to preserve it as it was because we're into the business of returning meadow and brook. That would be
That's
great
our goal.
if you could do that. It would be great if you could commit to that at some point.
That is our goal.
Sorry?
That is our goal.
And one last thing is, can we also, at least those of us that are interested, I study the stuff you guys send me. I have a lot of it. I need my own storage space for Meadowbrook things. And you do a good job with all this picture, so I'd love to have these same renderings so I can ask you more questions. Thanks.
Okay, then, in that case, again, zoning board of appeals get on their agenda, send us the colored materials, we'll review, come back to us, we'll have comments and be able to give you some, I hope, perhaps, some intelligent input. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you at last. Now you know who you talk to. Hi, nice to see you. Yeah, no, you don't want to do that.
I was going to Meadowbrook. Is there some contentious issue?
Isn't that awful?
No,
That
it's
didn't
safe
work.
for one hour.
No kidding. I will be in touch with you when I take it. We'll let you write it again on here.
Yes. I started getting
Anyway, whatever side of there.
I'm not sure what.
Let's think of it.
It's right there on the agenda. If you want to grab it, it's
Interesting. Down there. The reason why they declared it was almost like a county school. So suddenly they were off the book for all kinds of ordinance reviews. Okay, we're ready to have a discussion with the Affordable Housing Trust. Are they out here? So we're all on the same page.
We have a long drive.
Yeah, very long driveway, yeah. Okay, and your name is Rose? I think the last name is
recent, the team, the consulting team, I'm the point person, and then I'm going to comment to the board, so.
I don't know.
But I think he's getting confused with the ZBA process, where all the comments are technically go to the ZBA. But they haven't filed them.
Well,
So,
that's what makes it a challenge.
I didn't know folks who had houses that aren't there anymore, like the suites and brooks.